out here. The job description is pretty basic. It says they're looking for someone to restore America's place in the world. They're looking for someone to reinvigorate the middle class and to end the politics of polarization. Ladies and gentlemen, no matter how you cut it, all the opportunities we have in this nation and the problems we face, not one single one lends itself to a 51% solution. Not one single one of all you've heard the candidates speak about tonight, not one can occur without establishing a national consensus. My friend Bill Richardson is correct. Whomever you nominate, if they're going to succeed as president, better be able to compete in at least a dozen of those red states. Ladies and gentlemen, I worked very hard, as you did, for John Kerry. John asked me to be Secretary of State. I've known him for 35 years. I worked hard for Al Gore. But the sad fact is, they only won the same 20 states, and they lost 30 states by overwhelming margins. Even had we won Ohio, which we should have won Ohio, and John should be president of the United States. Even had we won, that leaves 58 members of the United States Senate who would have come from states where we got on average about 37% of the vote. One thing I know is the Senate. In those difficult questions as president, I'm going to have to ask of the Senate when I go up to a Democratic member of the House or a Democratic member of the Senate from a red state, and I say, I need you to make this really tough vote, Tommy, I need your help. You're going to look at me and you're going to say, Mr. President, you've got no legitimacy in my state. You only got 34% of the vote. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not running for the exercise. I'm not running to sit behind a desk and having had to mortgage all the things for which I ran. Ladies and gentlemen, we better nominate somebody who can get 45 to 50% of the vote in 25 of those states. We better nominate somebody who can go out there and win in Louisiana and Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky. We better go out and nominate somebody who's not drawn to an inside straight, the same 20 plus 1. Not because that may not be the smartest way to win, but you'll not be able to govern. Ladies and gentlemen, this administration has dug America in a very deep hole. A very deep hole. That's not hyperbole. General Republicans understand that. Democrats understand that. Independents understand that. And I get asked all the time, why do I speak so much about Iraq? Well, let me tell you why I speak about Iraq so much. Iraq's sort of like that big boulder sitting in the middle of the road. Our grandchildren, when they write about foreign policy and what the most important issues facing America in the year 2007 and 8, may not pick Iraq. They'll pick other things. But there's nothing more immediate and debilitating than what's going on in Iraq. For in order for us to regain our flexibility, to be able to do what we need to do at home, and our credibility to restore America's place in the world, you must deal with Iraq. And you're all being faced with false choices. The false choice in Washington is being put forward, and Leonard knows it, is either we escalate and turn the problem over to the next president, as this president suggests, or some suggest we leave and we hope for the best. Ladies and gentlemen, when the next president of the United States is sworn in, he or she will be left with literally no margin for error. Hear me now. Hear me. That is not an exaggeration. Not in the lifetime of any man or woman in this room has a transfer of power left less of a margin for error than what will happen next time. And that president better know more than his or her advisors. That president better be smarter than the people who are advising him or her. That president better know what he or she thinks about our state of the world, because that president's going to immediately have to extricate us from Iraq. without mortgaging our future. I don't want my son, who some of you have met, who's Attorney General of the state of Delaware, who's a captain in the United States Army, I don't want him going back to Iraq, going to Iraq. But guess what? I don't want a grandson going to Iraq either. And how we lead, what we do will make that determination. And ladies and gentlemen, we all talk about a plan. There's a lot of my good friends you heard tonight and others you'll hear. They say cap the troops, cut the troops, move the troops, surge the troops. But to be a responsible president, you must ask and be able to answer the next question. Then what? After you cap, then what? After you leave, then what? After you surge, then what? Did you ever ask yourself, literally, I'm not being facetious, why I'm the only candidate in either party that's laid out a detailed, precise plan for how to get out of Iraq, and I've been doing it for the last 2 years? The so-called Biden-Geld plan. It's because I'm the only guy that knows things. I want to tell you, Bill Richardson, the guy you heard here tonight, he is fully, totally, completely qualified to be President of the United States of America. He's forgotten more about foreign policy than 90% of the people I work with. But why is it? Why is it nobody in either party's laid out a detailed plan? Because we're all conditioned to not take risks. Everybody in my team said, don't lay out a plan, Joe. And I'm not exaggerating, it's not hyperbole. Because guess what? If you lay out a plan and you lay it out in detail, it's there to be shot at by everyone. You become the target. Isn't that what we learned from Karl Rove? Not a joke, right? Now, if the plan is adopted and doesn't work, you're finished. But ladies and gentlemen, I am not running for President of the United States to hear hail to the chief. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a simple solution and a probable solution for Iraq. We better move now, though. The very thing that everybody talked about, the president's about to veto, is the Biden-11 provision, which says we immediately begin to draw down troops now. They're all out by March of 2008, and we change the mission. But ladies and gentlemen, here's the deal. There's never been a time in the history of the world when there's been a self-sustaining cycle of sectarian violence that it's ended in any one of four ways. Either you occupy the country for a generation like the Persians and the Brits and the Turks have done, you replace one dictator with another, which would be the saddest irony of all, or you let them fight it out till one side massacres the other. Or the last thing, which I've been proposing for a year, and I promise you, every candidate you heard in the Democratic Party is going to come around to the position before this is over. And it's simple. You separate the parties, you give them breathing room. You provide for a limited central government. You give them power over the control of their daily lives, their security, their laws relating to divorce, and their laws relating to education, their laws relating to religion, the very thing they're killing themselves over. And ladies and gentlemen, when the war ends, if we leave without having traded a dictator for chaos, the flexibility returns. As your president, that will give me $100 billion a year we're spending right now. Eliminating the tax cut as I proposed and others have proposed will give me another $85 billion a year. Imagine what I can do with that. I can, in fact, make sure that every child in America, immediately, for $26 billion a year, has health insurance. I can provide catastrophic health insurance for everybody now. I can turn around. Everybody talks about the answers. They're not complicated. You heard my friends talk about Darfur. Nobody but me said exactly what needs to be done. We must say to the Sudan, we are going to immediately impose sanctions, and there's no answer but force. When a nation engages in genocide, it forfeits its right to sovereignty. And ladies and gentlemen, I warn you, I will not get credit for being the guy against the war and the guy who has a plan to end the war. But let me tell you something. If I'm your president and we have not ended that genocide, I will send troops to end the genocide. 2,500 troops can stop the Janjaweed. Your children are going to read about this like our children are hearing, and we're hearing about Hotel Darfur.